Icarus?
Yes, Dr. Searle.
Please refilter the observation room portal.
Filter up or down, Dr. Searle?
Down.
Hey guys, what's happening? Niyat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we'll be taking a look at the 2007 sci-fi thriller Sunshine, directed by Danny Boyle. Featuring an international star-studded cast including Cillian Murphy, Chris Evans, Michelle Yeoh, Rosy Byrne, Benedict Wong, Cliff Curtis, Mark Strong, and Hiroyuki Sanada, the film takes place in the year 2057 and follows a group of specialized scientists who embark on a last-ditch effort to reignite a dying sun and save the Earth from extinction. Written by the amazing Alex Garland, who has since gone on to both write and direct some of my favourite thought-provoking science fiction films, Ex Machina and Annihilation. The film's inception began in the early 2000s, with Garland writing a speculative script that he then sent over to Boyle, a few years after their collaboration on 28 Days Later. Boyle had actually been briefly attached to direct another film in 2005, based on the Worcester cold storage factory fire of 1999, but due to backlash from victims and firefighters involved in the tragedy, the film, then titled 3000 Degrees, was permanently shelved, leaving a space open in 2005 for Boyle to collaborate with Alex once again. While Fox had been uneasy about funding Sunshine due to the film's similarities to Solaris, which bombed at the box office, a mixture of combined outside financing and the pair's success with their heart-thumping zombie thriller 28 Days Later helped the film get greenlit. The script was then refined by the duo over the next year and was based on scientific discussions about the heat death of the universe, which suggests that the universe, or in this case our solar system, would evolve to a state of no thermodynamic free energy and would therefore be unable to sustain processes that increase entropy. Sunshine also borrows elements from Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, Ridley Scott's Alien, and Andrei Tarkovsky's Solaris, which all feature a group of explorers that encounter a threat never seen before by humanity.
You just put in. Oh, that messy.
Yeah, try it more stationary. It may feel violent enough without too much movement.
Lights. Action.
My mistake. Trials into deep space.
Filming for Sunshine began on the 23rd of August 2005 at 3 Mills Studios near Stratford in East London and lasted just over 3 months. To achieve the near future but still familiar feel of the enormous Icarus spaceship the astronauts were on, Boyle hired numerous scientific advisors, NASA employees, astrophysicists, and futurists to consult on the technical and design aspects. A total of 17 extensive sets, 8 stages, and many detailed models were constructed at the massive studio and used to represent the different parts of the spacecraft, including the main deck, the oxygen garden, the relaxation chamber, sleeping quarters, observation deck, and the hallways. While the film, like most sci-fis, did have a lot of scientific inaccuracies, Brian Cox, who is a professor of particle physics at the University of Manchester, was hired to advise the cast and crew on what to expect when travelling long distances in the empty vacuum of space, but many of his ideas were considered and eventually sidelined in favour of plot. Cox himself even noted that Sunshine wasn't a documentary, but merely a film trying to get across the feeling of what it's like not only to be a scientist, but also what a mission such as this would entail in a mere hour and 40-minute runtime, which he stated the film successfully achieved. While the scientific content has been criticised by scholars, like the portrayal of weightlessness, a lack of explanation on how the artificial gravity worked, and the whooshing sounds on the exterior of Icarus, despite the fact that there can be no sound in the vacuum of space, a deliberate choice I might add to avoid the CGI shots looking cheap, the film's ability to tackle the psychological aspects of space travel and the burden of being humanity's last hope was praised by most of them. This film is bleak, which I think is why it struggled to resonate with commercial audiences, with Sunshine underperforming at the box office, making only $32 million against its $40 million budget. This is in contrast to Garland, Boyle, and Cillian Murphy's collaboration on 28 Days Later, which was shot on a budget of $8 million and brought back over $80 million at the box office. Everything from the talented international cast, the thrilling story, direction, cinematography, and especially the sound production helped turn the film into a cinematic feast. The noises created by the Icarus spacecraft, the sound of the sun burning, to the radio transmissions, are all forever etched into my mind. Even the outstanding soundtrack by John Murphy and the band Underworld creates this ethereal balance between serenity and chaos, moving from one to the other and occasionally blending the two for intense dramatic effect. From a technical point of view, Sunshine is one of the most impressive space exploration films of the 21st century, using familiar visual language and distorting it uniquely through its transitions, cuts, and introductions to scenes. A great example of this has to be the transition featuring Harvey hearing the sound of Icarus. The film also has one of the most clever and misleading introduction shots, with a slow pan into the sun as Murphy explains the plan. But as the sun gets larger and passes our view, we begin to realize that we've merely been seeing the refractory shield of Icarus too. Little things like the oxygen garden, which provided breathable air for the crew and enabled them to grow their own food. The regular Earth routines like preparing food, cleaning up afterwards, the social interactions, the relaxation chamber, and exercises the crew all had to go through were all aspects insisted upon to Boyle and Garland by consultants at NASA as being crucial to an astronaut's sanity. It's for this reason that it's not until after the catastrophic failure of the oxygen garden that most of the crew begin to experience physical, emotional, and psychological instability. The film's cinematographer, Alwyn Kushler, deliberately requested that no gold or yellow be present in the interior of the ship and utilized a stark contrast of the sun's bright yellow light and juxtaposed it with the dark, claustrophobic colors of the ship. It's for this reason that whenever we see the sun or its reflection from the shields of Icarus, we are blown away and almost hypnotized by its spell.
Captain? Captain?
Another thing that caught my eye was Icarus, the name of the ship the crew travelled on, which foreshadowed their doomed fate, alluding to the character the same name from Greek mythology, who desired to go beyond the realms of human boundaries, resulting in his tragic death. The man had essentially used wings created by his father, Daedalus. Ecstatic that he could now fly and eager to push the boundaries of what he was capable of, Icarus ignored his father's warning not to fly too close to the sun, resulting in wax within his wings melting and him falling to his death. This not only foreshadows the fate of Icarus 1, but also illuminates the risks faced by the second ship, which ignores its mission parameters and detours to rendezvous with the lost ship to the detriment of its own crew. Though they are ultimately successful with their mission, it's important to note that the ship Icarus, much like its namesake in Greek mythology, also burns up in the immense heat of the sun. The film also has subtle allusions to God and the devil, with the sun representing God, and the captain of the first ship, Pinbacker, who had fallen from grace, representing the devil. During his first encounter with Kappa, Pinbacker even asks if he was an angel.
Are you an angel?
Now, the film begins with a narration of Kappa explaining that dark energy had destabilized the sun, threatening all life on Earth with a new ice age. Faced with the eventual extinction of all species on the planet, the scientific community concluded that our only hope was the deployment of an experimental stellar bomb with a mass equivalent to Manhattan Island to the sun's surface, with the hope that this would restabilize it. To this end, a global effort is initiated, pulling in the resources of all nations to create the bomb and Icarus 1, a prototype spacecraft with advanced heat shielding and a sophisticated artificial intelligence tasked with transporting the payload, but due to unexplained circumstances, we're told that the mission had failed. 7 years after the tragedy, a second attempt is made with Icarus 2, an exact replica of the first spacecraft that is constructed using the remaining resources left on Earth. The crew consisted of Dr. Robert Capa, a physicist based on Brian Cox, Captain Kanada, a focused, compassionate, and determined mission leader, followed by Harvey, the first officer and communications specialist, Mace, the ship's engineer, Trey, the technically savvy navigator, and Cassie, the pilot who serves as the emotional tether for the group. There's also a Dr. Searle, who serves as the ship's medical officer and counselor, and finally Corazon, the botanist who maintains the oxygen garden and provides both food, oxygen, and carbon for the vessel during its scheduled return voyage to the sun and back. While the first 16 months of travel go smoothly, as the ship begins nearing the sun, their communications start to get plagued by solar noise, giving the crew just 24 hours to send a message back home to their loved ones. Finding it difficult to put his thoughts into words, Kappa makes several attempts at his message and unintentionally runs out the clock for Mace, who doesn't get a chance to say goodbye to his family, creating animosity between the two, though they eventually settle this and move on with the task at hand. Dr. Searle then begins developing a strange fascination with the sun and becomes curious as to what it would be like to see the sun with an unfiltered view. The ship's AI warns him that he can only tolerate 3.1% of the sun's light, and Searle has Icarus set the system to enable him to view it for a short duration of time. Strangely affected by this experience, the Doctor starts spending many hours in the viewing room and repeats his exposure to the sun so much that his skin begins to peel. I should point out that this phenomenon Searle experiences is also directly linked to the fate of Icarus 1. As they slingshot past Mercury, Icarus 2 discovers the distress beacon of Icarus 1. While the possibility that the first crew could still be alive weighs heavy on the group, Kappa is forced to make an educated decision and reasons that 2 bombs have a better chance of success than 1. With this, he then recommends that Captain Kanata change course and commandeer Icarus 1, leading to the ship's navigator Trey calculating and implementing a trajectory to intercept the first ship. Unfortunately for the crew, due to the rushed circumstances surrounding his calculations, Trey forgets to realign the shields to protect the ship from the sun, causing damage to 4 of the shield panels. This creates a catastrophic chain reaction, forcing Kanata and Kappa to embark on a spacewalk to repair the panels, assisted by Cassie, who moves the damaged side of the ship away from the sun to give them shade to walk in, which in turn causes the sun's heat to destroy the now protruding communications tower. To make matters worse, not only does some of the reflected light from the panels destroy the ship's oxygen garden, but the AI also starts returning the ship to its original alignment to safeguard the integrity of Icarus 2's living quarters, putting Kanata and Kappa in danger. Though Cassie and Harvey, the ship's 2IC, fight with the AI for control, Kanata decides to allow it to realign the ship to its previous position, as the mission outweighed their own lives. Kanata then orders Kappa to safety and repairs the last panel alone, moments before he's immolated by the sun's rays. Due to the destruction of the oxygen garden, the astronauts are forced to intercept Icarus 1, and because of Trey's mistake and his insistence that the technical problems and the death of Kanata were his fault, the navigator is sedated to prevent him from harming himself. After reaching Icarus 1, Dr. Kappa, Searle, Mace, and Harvey, who had now inherited the role of captain, board the ship and begin investigating the fate of its crew. They notice that the vessel's mainframes had been sabotaged, making the delivery of its bomb improbable, and they also find a bizarre log entry from Captain Pinbacker, the man in charge of the first mission. In addition to this, most of the crew members from Icarus 1 are found charred in the observation deck, having exposed themselves to the full light of the sun. Further complicating their mission as a whole is the sudden decoupling of the 2 ships, which destroys the outer airlock and strands the 4 crew members on the doomed vessel. With no other way to get back to Icarus 1, May suggests that one person stay behind to manually operate the airlock, while the other 3 propel themselves to their ship using the vacuum release created by the sudden loss in pressure. Searle magnanimously volunteers to stay behind, allowing Kappa, Harvey, and Mace to rocket into space with his help, but Harvey misses the airlock and freezes to death, while the other 2 miraculously make it back to Icarus 1. Knowing that he was now consigned to live on board Icarus 1 alone until its resources were exhausted, and having spent much of the mission obsessed with looking into the sun, Searle voluntarily exposes himself to its full deadly force in the observation deck, resigning himself to the same fate as the now dead crew members around him. The remaining crew members on Icarus 2 then attempt to understand why and how the ship had been decoupled in the first place, and they rule out interference from the ship's AI, leaving Trey as the only possible cause. Corazon then explains that due to the destruction of the oxygen chamber, there was now only enough oxygen left for 4 of the 5 crew members to reach the sun. Believing that the unstable Trey was responsible for destroying the link between the 2 ships, leading to the death of Harvey and Searle, the remaining members decide to kill Trey, but when they find him, they discover that he'd already taken his own life. Kappa is suddenly informed by Icarus that there still wasn't enough oxygen to complete the mission because of an unknown 5th person that was on board the ship. When Kappa investigates this, he discovers an insane Pinbacker, the captain of Icarus 1, who is now disfigured with severe burns caused by his exposure to the sun. After attacking and wounding Kappa, the crazed captain, who through his exposure to the sun's heat had garnered a spiritual belief that God had wanted mankind to end, stalks and kills Corazon and removes the mainframe from its coolant, effectively disabling Icarus, and he also begins pursuing Cassie throughout the ship. May sacrifices himself in an attempt to lower the computer back to its coolant to give the crew control over Icarus, but is only successful in rebooting the mainframe, forcing the wounded Kappa to decouple the bomb and manually activate it as it fell into the sun. After a confrontation with Pinbacker within the bomb itself, Kappa and Cassie manage to escape its grasp. The physicist then activates the bomb, completing their arduous task at the expense of the entire crew. The bomb then begins to successfully reignite the sun, and when we return back to the frozen Earth, Kappa's sister and her 2 children marvel at the sun returning to its former glory. With the combination of Alex Garland's masterful script and Danny Boyle's excellent world building, Sunshine establishes a strong driving plot with fully realized characters. While the setup is more than enough to have the viewer invested into the film, Sunshine manages to use the preceding developments to create an introspective viewing adventure. Each new obstacle the crew are forced to deal with has us, as the viewers, question whether we'd make the same decision, given that the fate of humankind rested on us making the right choice. Well, that's all for today, folks. A big thanks to all of you guys who requested we explore Sunshine. Don't forget to hit subscribe and click the notification icon to stay up to date on all my content, and if there's anything else you'd like to request, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, it's been a pleasure. Niyat here with Film and Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.
It's invigorating. It's like taking a shower in life. You lose yourself a little.
Like a flotation tank.
You and the darkness are distinct from each other because darkness is an absence of something. It's a vacuum. But total light envelops you. It becomes you.